Hello, cinema fans. We are the Cinema Joes here again. We're talking about the conclusion to the original Star Wars trilogy, Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. I think I said before, this growing up, this was my absolutely favorite film. Um, I'm looking forward to talking about it because I don't know if it's still the case. Let me pass it off to Justin real quick. We'll get us started on.
Oh, sure. Well, guys, I mean, it's interesting revisiting this film, especially because it's nice that you say that, Casey, because when I was younger, this probably was my favorite Star Wars movie. I watched this more times probably than any other film in the series. But now that we're a little bit older and I don't know, maybe wiser,
Maybe
I
sadder.
I guess I
A little bit of both.
yeah,
They're
definitely,
not exclusive.
yeah. Are you guys satisfied with this film as a conclusion to this series, and does it fulfill the promise and the expectations maybe that you had for it based upon the first two, based upon A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back?
I think it does for me. I think the interesting thing to note is, of course, on the one hand, I could have done. We were talking about this before we started recording. I ended up having to stream them because at the moment I don't have access to my DVDs, and I had no choice eventually but to stream the later Lucas expanded CGI editions of all three movies, which was actually interesting because I grew up watching the theatrical cuts and it was fun to notice where weird stuff was added in. And in this movie, it included a lot of swipe shots of other planets at the very end after the death of the Empire and the Emperor and the destruction of the Death Star, which I really felt actually was. Which I was the only change out of all the ones that I in all three movies that actually bothered me, because it took us out of the immediate focus on our core characters, which we've said in some of our past episodes was one of the big strengths of the originals, was that for all the world building, it always kept its focus on Luke, Leia, and Han, and that was the real strength of the movies.
Did they not jump to other planets in the original edits? Because I do
Nope,
vaguely remember. I thought in the extended
nope.
versions they just added in a couple of planets from the original prequels, like Naboo
I see. Here's
and
the thing.
Coruscant.
I'm very certain on this. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm very certain on this because this was actually, funnily enough, the first Star Wars movie I ever recall sitting down and watching from start to finish. I was at a cousin's house. We wanted to watch a movie. They stuck in Return of the Jedi. So this was the first memory. That's the first memory I ever have of sitting down and watching a Star Wars movie and knowing what I was watching, and it was this movie. And then I went back and saw the others. So this one will always have sort of a special place in my heart for that. Um, so because of that, I'm actually quite certain about that last ending bit. And was incredibly discombobulated, and we talked about this as well, when it literally is Hayden Christensen appearing alongside Yoda and Obi-Wan as Spectres at the
Uh,
very end. I was like, I don't remember that.
I mean, if they're gonna do a young Anakin, why don't they just do a young Obi-Wan too,
Yeah, I know, right?
or a young
It
Yoda? Let's see what
completely,
he
it
looks like at
completely
20 years
breaks
old.
like the whole idea of that. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I'd have to say it does because it really struck me watching this again. This is the most action-packed of the three movies. There's no world building at all, none. It's just it's really one action beat after another, well paced and well made, but it's all building up to the conclusion, then giving
You
us the
know,
conclusion.
you know what's interesting about that? I actually also felt this might be, I, it's it to me it feels like one of the slowest Star Wars
I
films
was
too.
gonna, yeah, I have to agree with you there on that one, Casey.
There's
Slower than A
you're
New
probably
Hope.
I can't be sure about that.
If
There's definitely go ahead, Justin.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought.
I don't
uh,
really ever have trains of thoughts. It's more like clouds of ideas.
like
Clouds of
that's something I
consciousness.
wrote. Like that's something I wrote down. I was like, this feels like first of all, like the dialogue scenes don't feel very well paced to me. There's a lot of like awkward pauses, and I was like, I didn't notice this before with the other movies. I don't know if that's. I don't know. Maybe I'm just noticing it more now for some reason. But I did feel like this movie did have a pacing issue, and it extends more than just it extends to more than just the dialogue, but also to I'm thinking of scenes on Endor. I'm thinking of scenes in Jabba's throne room, which I think it's interesting. Though you said that you felt like there was no world building in this, but I almost felt like I wonder if it's. I don't feel like the world building is very good, but I think they're trying to do it here, which is a little bit disappointing because I think the first two movies did that world building so well. And to me, here it almost seems more like, oh, I want to show this part, but what the first two movies did so well in terms of world building was they tied it in to the narrative. It didn't feel superfluous. And here it does, to me, feel superfluous. And I think Lucas's desire to add new things, like we were saying, is just more of that, extraneous stuff that really doesn't add anything, and really does, I think, slow down this movie and take you out of the immediacy of it.
One example, particularly that kind of struck me as superfluous in this movie was Leia being Luke's sister. That the whole scene where Luke tells her it's nice and all, but I don't think it was necessary. I don't think it added anything. Although maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
Well,
cause
after
later
the big
on
tease
it does.
at the end of Empire Strikes Back, that needed to be resolved.
Well, why add it in the first place is my whole thought. Like it's it shoehorns it. See, I think it was done to get Han Solo and Leia together because they were doing better like in focus groups, which coupled works better. So they had to come up with an excuse to get Luke to not want Leia or vice
Do we
versa.
have any evidence that that was the case?
I'm gonna have to look it up. I heard that rumor, and it could have just been a rumor, but
I never thought of that. Well, yeah, like it would solve that problem, regardless, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, what does the fact that they're brother and sister, what does that actually add to this story?
I don't know, maybe that there is more hope
Well, I mean,
and more Jedi.
yeah, and one other thing I can think of is that it does. It becomes a crucial part of a later confrontation between Luke and Darth Vader.
this is true.
And
Yeah, I was gonna say
because
that
she's
too,
his
but-
sister, she's understood to have the power of the Force, and because of that, Darth Vader uses that, and that gets Luke really, really angry. I mean, I thought that was really I forgot that was like the major thing that set Luke off against his own father, was the fact that
Yeah.
if he like, oh, I'll just turn your sister, like that was like, but
It's
and
like,
that
yeah,
was,
you're not important anymore.
and to be fair, though, that's less because she's his sister, I think, and more because they do have a bond that goes beyond just the fact that they're, family, that they're
Well,
blood
and also
related.
it adds more of a level of threat to that because Darth Vader could have easily said, "Join us, or I'll go find Han and Leia and kill them."
Right.
And that of course would, but of course Luke would have expected that. But now that he knows Leia's his sister and has the capacity to become a Jedi, he's now faced with the more terrifying prospect because he knows as well. Leia has faced death 1,000 times. He can't, pretend to protect her from that. But getting corrupted and taken to the dark side, that's not something she would necessarily be able to she would necessarily be able to handle, and that would arguably be a fate worse than death for her. So it's like if she would be killed, like she would go down fighting for what she believed in, but if she got corrupted and turned to the dark side, that'd be even worse, and that just adds an extra level of threat that pushes him over the edge.
Right.
On a personal note, if I were in Luke's shoes, I totally would have killed the Emperor.
Well, he does. I mean, there is that moment where he does, he does obey the Emperor's command to strike him down, and of course he's met by
Right.
Vader's, lightsaber. So he does.
Well,
He
'cause that was
does
the
get to
point.
that point. Like he does.
But But you could have done it. He could have done it not out of hate for the Emperor, but out of love for his friends and out of love for the galaxy and freedom. I mean,
I feel like that would have been too nuanced for Lucas to try to like work in. I think it was best to keep things simple. Because when things
it is
get
very
complicated, Lucas's brain
the,
starts to spin in weird directions.
the Star Wars universe, good and bad, is very simple, very black and white, and
Well,
and
I
that's
think the
actually
moral middle ground is handled better when it's not Lucas writing about it. Like when it's Timothy Zahn or Matthew Stover doing the
right.
writing, that's where I think the moral middle ground is handled very, very well.
Right, and I was just about to say that's what I love about the extended universe because you have these morally complex characters struggling to fit their own emotional experiences with the black and white worldview that is Star Wars. Because
I really
that
see the movies. I see the movies as the skeletal frame, and the books and the extended universe as the flesh and organs and skin.
but you always have good and evil in the
Oh yeah,
extended universe. But you have characters trying to navigate and find out how like where do they fit on the spectrum.
yeah.
So it's really that's to me what I love most about the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I think we got a little off topic.
Well,
Just a bit.
I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting reviews because, like, I feel like they do that. I think they accomplished that moral complexity a little bit with Luke in this movie, and I really feel like it's a culmination of, of Empire in that in that movie when he learns that he is part of when he learns that he is Darth Vader's son, or even the foreshadowing before that of that walk in that cave when he sees underneath Darth Vader's mask is his own face. I feel like those are harbingers of what's fulfilled in this movie, of him realizing that he can be as capable as someone as evil as the Emperor or Darth Vader, that he is capable of evil. And I feel like the film does, I think, it does explore that to a certain extent. There's a duality to good and evil, even in someone like Luke Skywalker, who started out and he's just the face of innocence and do-goodery. I mean,
It's remarkable how little his face changed over the 6 years of these movies being released.
I mean, with the wasn't he in like a car accident or something, and he like suffered some facial?
I think that was many years later.
Oh, was that?
Oh, I don't know.
I thought it was like between New Hope and Empire, but I'd have to look. But yeah, but
he's been hidden in the marketing for the Force Awakens so much. I'm really looking forward to seeing how exactly they introduce him. Like, how exactly his entrance in his first scene is handled. If it's going to be, like, treated as nothing, or if it's going to be this big dramatic moment.
Yeah. I mean, but what I like about this movie, it does have a moment. It has a moment that the Emperor did not anticipate, which is Luke realizing what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
With the look. And actually, I think that moment
And the
is
Ewoks.
pretty good.
And the Ewoks,
yes,
the Emperor underestimated the Ewoks.
Yes, I agree with you there as well.
Fucking Ewoks.
Yeah, do we want to? I figured we would get to the Ewoks at some point.
I don't get the Ewok hate. I'm going to say it up front. I don't care.
Well, here's the.
I don't know what to feel about it anymore.
So, as far as I understand, originally I think Lucas wanted to set it on. Actually, I don't even know if he had the name for it yet, but on the Wookiee homeworld, which is Kashyyyk, I believe.
Ah, okay.
But I don't know if he had that name yet for it. So, but like that would have made more sense to me because you see in this movie that, and you also saw in the prequels that the Wookiees, while there was a certain, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say primitive, but well, why not? Like there was a certain primitive weapon, but at the same time they did have like the fact that he has a crossbow that fires, like a blaster.
Shots.
Yeah, like it basically is a blaster. It's just, easier to hold probably. But like, and I feel like that would have been interesting. and I also feel like I like the idea of the Empire not knowing how to deal with like guerrilla tactics or like this kind of environment. I don't know. Now that's so the concept, and I think that's what Lucas was going for. He wanted to the irony of this empire being crushed by, in some cases, literally by this primitive tribe. But they do show that they have ingenuity and that there is this they're using guerrilla tactics to take these guys out, which is interesting. I feel like in the execution, that's where the failure is.
Am I really supposed to believe that that the stormtroopers died when they got hit by a rock?
That's exactly what I'm
talking about. What the hell are they?
Well, yeah, with those helmets. Although I do have to say, some of the scenes, it only occurred to me now, but some of the scenes where like the Ewoks are literally swarming over them with their spears, I thought to myself, Jesus Christ, that must be a terrifying way to go. Like 1,000 tiny stab wounds all over your body. And just like smothered and stabbed to death by these little like furry balls, like not able to even take off your helmet to like breathe. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's actually kind of dark. When they go down beneath the bushes, and you just see the Ewoks going, meow, meow, making stabbing motions.
If a Wookiee had thrown that rock and hit the stormtrooper in the head, then I could believe it. Then I could believe that they were killed. But I mean, I suppose I suppose we are not giving the Ewoks enough credit. Perhaps they are like Wolverines and just really strong in a small frame. Maybe, I don't know. That's possible.
They're able to tie up a bunch of humans and carry them and put them on top of a fireplace. So
yeah, but not like one or two of them. Didn't they have like several? Or maybe they did just do the one and two carrying them.
Well, no, they did subdue humans and had them like at knife point and were able to like tie them up and lift and hoist them up over like a pit to be roasted.
Right, but how many did the lifting is my question.
Oh, I don't know.
Because if they had like 10 of them carrying the sticks.
Check the extended universe. I don't know. Read
I
the
don't
book.
know. Maybe it's just in the execution then. Maybe they just came off as like too
or maybe
cutesy.
it's because of the fact that they were like puppets basically that were being used for this, and you can't, to a certain extent with puppets, and that is in a sense the limit of practical effects. If you're going for something that small, it's hard to make it seem like they can do something with weight or with a lot of force behind it.
I thought they were short people. Inside.
I don't know. I don't know how they did it. But it's obvious that like the bows and arrows and the rocks and the slingshots that they're using are fake. So you have to kind of suspend disbelief and say, okay, I assume those arrows are super sharp and therefore able to penetrate stormtrooper armor, or something like that. But you can't like really show it as being effective.
But at the same time, I mean, I feel like what this film series has been good at is, even though it is older and the effects are a little bit dated, I feel like we've been able to suspend disbelief throughout the film up until this moment.
I'm not saying it works as well here,
right?
But you notice this. Like, I think the flaws are more apparent.
There are plenty of flaws in the first scene too on Tatooine, but we don't care because that's a freaking awesome scene.
Are you talking about like the culmination of the rescue? Okay,
yeah, on the barge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even in general, like, were there a lot of flaws that really stood out to you, and damaged the scene in the first quarter?
I mean, I definitely think,
because if we're really picking it apart, we would find a lot.
Right.
But
I had some issues with the pacing in that sequence a little bit. Certainly, it's much better than. It's definitely one of the better parts of the movie. I would agree. And actually, I also like, even though we've been. I'm not a fan of the design of the Ewoks or the weapons or most of that sequence. I really did like the Rancor, which seemed a lot, which definitely had a practical feel to it. I love how unapologetically ugly it is. I mean, it's just it's not. This is not an aerodynamic, design at all on purpose. And I think it really works. and it definitely, I think, is a callback to some of the older serials that Lucas and his cohort were fans of.
Interesting thing about that scene. I went back, as part of this ceremony, just for out of my own, like, as part of this, series that we're doing, just for my own interest. I went back and read all of the reviews that Roger Ebert wrote for all of the Star Wars films, like the original review that he had published for each movie as it came out, just out of curiosity to see how his thinking on the movies shifted over time. And he singled out that scene with the Rancor as what was for him a prime example of what made, and I'd be interested to see if you guys agree, as a prime example of what set Star Wars apart as a really special film series. The fact that it took the time and devoted just a couple moments to showing the Rancor's trainer being broken up over the fact that his pen is dead. Now, this is a bad guy. He works for Jabba the fucking Hutt. But still, we get a moment of him oh, that was kind of his baby. Maybe he'd raised it since it was a baby. And he just watched it get, killed by some upstart Jedi. Aw. As sort of how the movies always had those little moments of just nuance to the world that, again, just made it feel real. So I really paid attention to that scene when I watched it again. It's interesting because they devote a good maybe 20 to 25 seconds, which is a lot in film time, of just seeing this guy break down and cry. And as one of the pig guards comes and throws his arm around and shows him
The pig guards.
What are they? Yeah, what are they?
They're Gamorrean guards, Noah. Come on.
From the planet of Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe in the 80s it really did set it apart. I don't know, or maybe I just grew up with these movies, so it doesn't really stand out to me. So I can't really give my input on that. I feel like I see it a lot nowadays, though. Maybe Star Wars is what started it.
I mean, see that
Maybe.
that scene stuck out to me because I felt like there's that. I'm not saying it should have been cut down because it shouldn't have been there at all, but it could have been done in a way, and that's, again, I think speaks to a major problem that I have with this movie is the pacing, because I feel like we spend that really kills the momentum, especially because we've just had this really thrilling kind of moment where Luke, effectively outsmarts I don't know if that's probably par for the course with the Rancor, not exactly the smartest being. But let's just say, he was the first one to actually, to best it. But yeah, it just that scene. I almost had a feeling. I remember thinking during that scene that I was like, was there a Star Wars fan who won a contest and that he got to be the trainer of this thing? Because I was like, I don't know. I'm not saying you couldn't have had the scene at all, but it just, like you were saying, though, it goes on for quite a lot, at least relative to the length of a movie. It goes on for a while.
Relative to what a nameless background character would usually get.
I mean, it's not just him breaking down. It's him going over, then coming to the realization, then breaking down, then turning to his friend, then breaking down. I mean, it just that seems I feel like there are enough moments in this movie which really feel like they take you out of the immediacy of the moment. And I don't know, that just, I can't say I cared enough about that moment. I mean,
On the other hand, when going back to the end with the Ewoks, when you see that scene where the Ewok is killed and his friend's trying to wake him up, I thought that was a really heartfelt moment that really added weight.
Yes, I agree with you. That's a good example of that. I also think, just to really briefly go back to the Rancor scenes, I think honestly I was more moved by the sound that the Rancor made as it died than I was by the trainer coming over and crying about it. And that speaks to
sort of...
I really think this film series has some of the best sound design. With a few exceptions, which maybe we'll get into, that I've heard. because that sound, and this has been consistent with a lot of the creatures, I think really that hit me on a gut level. That maybe the extending of that sequence with the trainer did not. So I don't know. That's
Mhm.
so it's little things like that. So I agree with Ebert on the premise. I just maybe don't agree with his example. But
Okay. Okay.
so, um, speaking, I mean, speaking to some of the sound design that I did not like, though, and this has been again consistent throughout the series, is
Oh, now I'm curious.
And when the Emperor gets thrown off,
yeah, that's yes,
his
yeah,
scream.
that one, and I'm also thinking
Yeah.
when Darth Vader gets kicked down the stairs.
No!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Any kind of gravitas that Darth Vader had, gone in a second. Now, to be fair, I don't know because
Well, also to see Vader flipping through the air like a
yes,
puppet on strings.
Yes, it is. You're right. It is more than just the sound design of that moment.
It's the visual of him going whoop.
And there was a moment like that in,
I'm sorry,
in
Darth Vader
Empire
voice.
too. To be fair, there was a moment like that in Empire when he falls down a platform.
Yeah.
Though, and also we should also acknowledge that because there are different versions of this, and we're not watching the theatrical versions. I did find out that there were alterations in some of the sounds, with at least in Empire. I don't know if in Jedi they
Okay.
altered it, but in Empire the one sound that Darth Vader makes was altered from the original.
This going way back, but they also, one of the biggest changes that I wasn't a big fan of when I first heard was in the original movie. They changed Obi-Wan's crate dragon sound, and I hate the new one.
Yeah.
I did not notice.
So
Yeah, it's such a small thing, but if you watch the comparisons, you'll see a huge difference.
yeah, as much as I laud the sound design, yeah, there are modes that I think are really bad too at the same time. But I feel like most of those were alterations. I don't know.
Something I want to know if you guys picked up on, because this drove my girlfriend nuts. Because film editing is something she does a lot, so that's something where she'll really notice how one scene cuts to another.
Yeah.
I had never realized until I went back and rewatched these movies, all of the scene changes are a swipe. Like it swipes from one scene to the next.
Is it every? Oh my god! It really
I
is.
can't believe it's every.
I mean, it's
might
very
not be,
present.
okay,
I guess
it
I
might
didn't
not
think of
be.
this. Yeah.
Or like every major scene change, like a change of setting, is a swipe of some kind. And I'd never picked up on that until I watched this, and I was like, wow, it like great movies, but it looks like someone did like a home editing turn on the scene changes.
At least it's not a star swipe. Simpsons reference, if anyone is just watching. Dad, there are other swipes than the star swipe.
Is that
Anyway.
does Steven Universe parody star swipes? Is that what that is at the end of every episode?
That's like an inverse star swipe, isn't it? Like as opposed to coming from the
Inverse
center
star
of the screen,
blackout.
it collapses in upon itself. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just something I noticed, and I don't
don't think it's
honestly. I
detrimental.
think it fits. It feels like parts of the movies, but it's odd because looking back at it now, that's the type of editing you don't see anymore.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
Now, unless a film is really deliberately going for an old school feel, you don't see those kinds of edits anymore.
That's a good point.
I mean, I have to, of course, I am going to go back and rewatch the prequels as well prior to the new movie. I recall them being in the Phantom Menace as well. Those types of swipes.
I do remember that too.
I wasn't sure
I
if
don't
you guys
think
had any thoughts on that, but it is something that my girlfriend made me very, very conscious of. Because we're watching this and she's like, what the hell is with all these edit wipes? This looks awful.
So she thinks it's detrimental. What do you? She thinks
It's something
detrimental to
that it's not her type of. It's not the type of editing that she really likes or that she does or likes to see. So I think it's one of those aesthetic things. Like someone who really doesn't like swipe editing would be really bothered by it. I don't
Yeah, but
care, so it doesn't make
that's
a
such
difference
a
to me.
yeah, like any layperson wouldn't even notice. Like me, I didn't have any clue. I actually kind of like them because they feel Star Warsy to me now.
That's what I'm saying. They feel at this point they feel like an integral part of the movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like I feel like with as with any filmmaking technique, of course, including editing, sometimes if you see something like it's possible to overuse something,
right.
and I feel like with this movie, it's with this series of movies, it's mostly worked for me because those wipes correspond to like a totally new planet or a new setting, like very distinct setting.
Yeah.
So now is it? I don't. Those are the only circumstances I can think of where they've used that wipe. I mean, they don't use it on every cut, but they do use it for a new scene for like. All right, scene change.
That's what I'm saying. Every major
Yeah.
scene change.
It's kind of like when you're reading a book and you see those three asterisks, and you know they're in like from a new perspective or something like that. That's kind
Okay.
of how I'm seeing they're using
Okay.
the swipes as Justin described them. Because you are right. When I think of it, I think of them going from like the Emperor's throne room to down on Endor
Yeah,
Moon, something
and
like that.
they're prepping
It's
you
changing.
for it. They're saying, okay, we're literally wiping this away, and now here's this other thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like it preps you mentally for a new setting.
I want to go back now and watch a lot of other films from that time period, just to see if it was something that more films were doing. Because it could be that like that was simply sort of the fashion of the times, and therefore Lucas took it for
Yeah.
these movies, and now it's fallen out of favor. But Star Wars, of course, is still like hugely popular and watched. So now it feels like an integral part of the Star Wars movies, whereas at the time it would have just been what most movies would do.
I
I don't know. I don't know if that's the case.
It's funny because as we were talking about this, I was like, wait, I remember hearing something or watching something about this, and it just occurred to me. There's a online critic that I like, Leon Thomas, who does a series called Renegade Cut, and he talks about
that guy.
his thing on the Seven Samurai, where he talked about that this was like the first, like this was like a real that what Akira Kurosawa did in that movie was to use the wipe as an editing technique, which had not really been used prevalently or even at all before then. And that might be Lucas, who owes a lot to Kurosawa for this film series. With Seven Samurai and Hidden Fortress are probably the two films that I can think of that were including influencing the robes that that the Jedi and the Sith wear, like that. So that might be, in addition to so many other things, Jedi is derived from a Japanese term. It might be a callback to that influence. In addition to,
That could very
I mean,
well be.
certainly, it's become more prevalent, and I think it's deserved to be as identifiable with Star Wars as with Kurosawa. But so that's another thing about why that technique is used, I think. So a little bit of trivia for you. I guess. So I feel like there was some other. There was like one more question I wanted to get you guys' opinions on.
Good conclusion to the series, because we talked about how we think it held up over
Yeah,
time. Did we touch on whether or not we like it as a conclusion?
I do think it is a good conclusion. I do like how everything resolves itself with Darth Vader and the Emperor and Luke. I think that's my favorite part of the finale. The star battle, the ship battle, we don't get a whole lot of that. It's fine. Of course, it's nowhere nearly as iconic as, and like the destruction of the Death Star is much quicker than in the first movie, so it doesn't have that level of iconicness to it. And then on the planet itself, or the moon itself, it really depends on how much you can tolerate the Ewoks. So if you like them, fine. It's a fine, conclusion. If you hate them, it's going to be your least favorite part of the entire movie. So that's like the core aspect of it. Luke coming into his own, and kind of reconciling the failure of the Jedi through, beating Darth Vader and the Empire, but also not, dirtying his hands with the dark side to do it. And being able to save his father at the same time. That's like the heart of the movie, and that part I think delivers very well. Palpatine's sissy death scream aside.
uh, yeah, I tend to agree. Regardless of what I think of this movie on its own, I do think it's a good end to the series because, and depending on what you think the series is about, um, you might disagree with me. And I think we discussed in the last episode on episode 5 that the series is about, to us, the character relationships between the three, and even with Vader in some extent, and how they grow as heroes and humans. Um,
Yeah.
and we see the culmination of their relationships. Luke and Han fall head over heels for each other, blah blah blah. Um, Luke reaches his true destiny, as Noah just described, and Han completes his transformation from scummy smuggler to leader and general and hero. So I think that those aspects come together nicely to make a cohesive story.
Yeah, I mean, I have as much as I've talked about. I mean, I've definitely talked about a lot of the flaws in this movie, and it's definitely my least favorite of the original trilogy. Having just seen it again, which is interesting because I think again like I said before, it was my favorite when I was younger, and I think the reason for that is because there is a catharsis to this movie that maybe the other movies don't have as much, just by the fact that it is the conclusion.
The confrontation in the throne room is
Yeah.
I don't think it's objectively like good writing or anything, but it's just something about it is so powerful and
There are
raw.
psychological stakes to it. I mean, it's a battle for Luke's soul. I mean, you can't get big.
Yeah.
Like those are some really big stakes there. And I mean, in addition to being for Luke's soul, it's also for potentially the survival of the Alliance.
And all the characters we care about, we want them to live and thrive.
I don't like. I think throughout this series that we've been talking about, I've talked about the directors and how that has really, in addition to other factors as well, that the person in the director's chair has to a certain extent influenced my opinion of the film. And whereas I feel like Empire probably had the best direction because it just felt like it felt both very propulsive yet still built upon character. I think it has the best directed action in the original trilogy. I honestly I still feel like the Battle of Hoth sequences are fantastic. But at the and so like I feel like this movie does not have that same level of skill behind the camera from I believe the director is Richard Marquand. I talked a little bit about some pacing issues, but at the same time there is something satisfying about this movie, and I also forgot how it's not entirely clear what the status of the Empire is at the end of this movie.
I think that's why I prefer the version without all of the celebrating planets.
Yeah.
Because that make it seems like, okay, the Emperor's dead. That means we're all hunky-dory.
Right.
Nope.
Right. Actually, Kayla pointed that out too. She was asking like, what happens to the rest of the Empire? Like all the people who were working for the Empire and serving the Empire.
That's what Episode 7 will answer.
Well, actually, and I know the movie should stand by itself, but to fill in the gap a little bit, one of the newest canon novel not the latest, but one of the most recent books that just came out that is now canon starts right after the scene where they're tearing down the statue on Coruscant. It starts right there, and as soon as that statue comes down, the Imperial police come and start shooting the civilians who are tearing the statue down. So you can clearly see that the battle is not over. But I know that's not part of the movie, so it can't be. We have to weigh the two separately. That's just to fill in the gap a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, in the EU, which of course they've declared non-canon, but it still holds up, I think.
Well, this
With
book is canon because it was released after the rebranding, the one I just described.
Yeah, I know. Still, anywho, well, in the EU as it currently exists, the latest novels came out like taking place 40 years plus after the events of Episode 6, and you find out in those books that the Empire still exists, but at like a quarter or a fifth of its former size, and it's just one more, larger kingdom now, or larger like conglomerate within the greater galaxy, with most of the other systems now having formed a new republic. And there's sort of like a truce with the Empire. Like the Empire is pushed back to like its core planets, and that's where it sort of stays.
Yeah. I don't want to do a disservice. I kind of skipped Leia when I was going over the character arcs just now because I struggle finding her arc because she was already such a strong character. But I don't want to do a disservice um, to Leia because she's a fantastic character who sometimes gets crapped on, saying like she's not important. I want to talk about the scene where she with her bare hands basically kills Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything more empowering than killing the biggest crime lord in the galaxy using nothing
Well,
but
also,
a
she's
chain
wearing
in a chain bikini?
Exactly. She's wearing her sex slave outfit at the time. So there's all sorts of symbolism you can read into that. Um, and that I think that you can go ahead and read into that. Like I said when we discussed A New Hope, I think there is a level of subversion for her character that's particularly impressive given how long ago this was made, given the fact that, she really doesn't need to have a major arc other than, just growing and developing a relationship with the other characters, because she starts off way more kick-ass than either Han or Luke are.
Yeah.
Like way
Even though
more.
she doesn't
like,
know
she's
how
like
to use a
leaps,
blaster,
and
she's
if
like,
anything,
oh, I guess I have to.
yeah, no. If anything, in the trilogy, it's Luke and Han bringing themselves up to her level. And there are still like gender stereotypes there, and there's of course the sexy slave outfit, which you could, I can't. I'm sure there are people who find it offensive or bothersome, and
Here.
I can't say that I can't say that I disagree with that, or I don't understand that, because I do get it. But despite that, they feel like the exceptions that prove the rule with her character, though.
Another great scene where she's acting really badass and manly, for lack of a better word, is when Han gets ambushed by the two stormtroopers, and then she shows Han her blaster that she's got hidden up against her stomach. And as Han moves out of the way, she shoots both those guys, like right there, dead.
Right. And that's entirely
That's
her
an awesome,
ruse.
empowering scene as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you had a great little reversal of their lines. Han's just like, "I love you."
Yeah,
I know.
That's a great.
I know.
There is
great
still
scenes.
some great banter in this movie. Lawrence Kasdan, who worked on Empire Returns here, I believe he's co-credited on this screenplay along with George Lucas. Which I feel like explains why it's not as structurally strong. But but still, why there's some good moments. I just want to go.
I like when they're flying in, and Han's like, "I don't know, fly casual."
Yeah, that's a great line.
And Chewbacca's like, "What?" It's like don't fly too close, but don't look like you're trying to not fly too close.
I just want to touch briefly on like this idea of like we were talking about Leia and these. I always am a little bit wary of calling violent acts empowering because there's still violence, and also I don't feel like it's. I mean, it's fitting. Let me just say, it's a fitting end for Jabba because it's basically a garrote. I mean, which is it's a traditional weapon used in organized crime. But at the same time, like that moment is not like the one that I think of, because I do feel like there are other moments that show that she's more than just someone who kicks ass, and it's actually, even though it's in probably my least favorite setting in the movie on Endor. It's the moment when Leia first meets an Ewok, and how she approaches it with a little bit of wariness, but also with an open-heartedness. which is something you might
Yeah.
not have seen in someone like Han Solo or maybe in Luke you could say. But like I do like that gives her that moment because I was like, that's what separates her from just being someone who kicks ass and takes names. Is that she knows
That's
when
absolutely
to
true.
use
Yeah,
that
you're
power.
absolutely right.
Well, and I think she's the only person we have any scenes like that with.
Yeah, exactly, and I do like that they give her that
in any of the movies.
moment, and that we do realize that this person can be capable of both those things, of doing things that are traditionally masculine in terms of wielding a blaster, but also these other things which well, I think they go beyond. I mean, I don't think being compassionate is a female thing, but I guess it's been traditionally associated with that. But I do feel like here we see that she's capable of both, and that makes her a more complicated person in general.
Yeah.
So. Right.
Whereas Han just shoots first.
Right.
Whoa! I went there.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I really feel like Han is
never gotten.
Sorry, go ahead.
I have never gotten the uproar over that scene. It has never been like.
Yeah, me either. Because the thing about Han is like, it's less to me about his abilities and more about his bluster that makes him interesting to me.
Yeah. No, but that's exactly the thing. It's not. It's clearly, even though he didn't shoot first, his abilities are still better because he dodged and was able to kill the guy in one shot. But it changes his character when he's shooting in self-defense versus when he's shooting preemptively. That's a totally different character.
But they build up his character at the beginning as being exactly the sort of person who would shoot preemptively just to save his skin.
Right, exactly. So when he's not shooting first...
It sounds like an effort to create a moral, right? It sounds like an effort to create Han Solo as a more moral character than he was originally meant to be.
That's exactly the problem, and that's why a lot of fans don't like it.
But that's weird, though, because the movie itself sets him up at first as he's just a greedy whorebag. Nothing more to him. That's it. And, the movie itself isn't trying to hide that. So, I don't know. I think it's trying to take a character and turn him into a saint, when the character's clearly not supposed to be a saint.
Right. Anyway, we should be wrapping up. We're a little over time.
Well, I don't know if there's anything else that we want to say.
What? Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good conclusion question. We pretty much touched on everything.
I love these movies. I'm so glad I had an excuse to watch them again.
Yeah.
I will think back on the memories of this as I suffer through the prequels.
These movies, there's something special about these movies that even though we as we've established are riddled with flaws or things that didn't age well, there's just something so special and something that is we're just drawn to when we watch it, and it's tough to put your finger on it. And I think the example would be, Justin, as you said, with the throne room. The stakes are not only are they very high and we can relate to these things psychologically, but not only are they very high, but we can also relate to these things very psychological on a very primal level, and we can kind of clearly we aren't Force users, but we can kind of see ourselves. We want to see ourselves as Luke, and I think really that's what draws me into the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I echo both of your sentiments. I was really happy to revisit this series, especially because you have a certain memory in your mind about them that changes when you go back to rewatch them.
Oh yeah.
And the thing that I'm as I'm watching this, I'm also looking ahead at at episode 7, and it's going to be tough to recapture this kind of thing because this was, and I think rightfully so, was considered a novel kind of thing. And now Star Wars has been so established that it's how do you echo the past, which part of the charm of this movie is that it is a little bit, that it is a little bit clumsy and that it is a little bit, but in a charming kind of way, and how do you do justice to that? How do you translate that to these upcoming movies, or do you try a new perspective? So I'm interested to see what they do with it, and you know, fingers crossed, I guess. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, the feel of this trilogy to me is going to be tough to recapture. Um, but who knows? Hopefully they'll be able to do it. The fact that they brought Lawrence Kasdan back as a screenwriter in this movie definitely says that they're going to try. God damn it! So.
Well, hey, and if the trailers are telling the truth, and our main characters will be a woman and a black dude,
Yeah.
thumbs
And a
up to them.
furball.
Yeah.
Don't forget the furball, Chewbacca.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, thank you guys for watching. We are the Cinema Joes. We will probably not be doing the prequels before Episode 7. Maybe we'll do them for Episode 8. Before Episode 8.
I will be writing about I'll be touching on the prequels a bit on my blog prior to the movie coming out. But I think our next episode is going to be. I think we will do a review proper of the new Star Wars movie
Yes,
after it comes out, and
Yeah.
we've all.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think I think we'll be back with our immediate straight up review of Episode 7 after it comes out, and we've all had the chance to see it. Um, which will probably be after Christmas, I imagine, because it's coming out like a week before Christmas.
All right. So you heard it here. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe. Do all that stuff, and we'll see you later.